The time has come, once again, to regale y'all with tales from my childhood. Namely, how I got into racing games in the first place. The first racing game that was ever bought for me was Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit on the PlayStation 1. It is a mostly arcade title with zero overarching story. You are a nameless, faceless racer engaging in street races and police pursuits as the name implies. Shortly after that, Need for Speed 4 High Stakes came out, and my parents bought that for me as well. It was different in that you finally had a story progression of sorts, and it was also notable in that you could play as a cop in addition to being a street racer. I don't know if my parents actually regarded the significance of the game that they bought me, but given that my father was working in law enforcement at the time, I was raised to be on the side of the rule of law. But something significant happened around 5 years later in 2003 with the release of Need for Speed Underground. This game actually goes a long way in making me realize that I was transgender. I'm not even kidding with this one. There is something to be said about my innate habit at the time of spamming the purple rose livery on every vehicle that I raced with. But not only that, I personally enjoyed the fact that Underground was the first racing game I played where you actively race alongside women drivers. Cars and racing have always been typically associated with masculinity, and in gaming, studies have more than corroborated that. Yet, Underground put a lot of due diligence into being open, not just with gender, but race as well. Though that is not my personal wheelhouse, so I'm gonna skip that for this video. Underground 2 and Most Wanted continued this trend, albeit more subtly. Rachel Teller and Mia Townsend were almost entirely supporting characters, and the Blacklist 15 consisted of only 3 prominent women compared to 12 prominent men. Not the greatest ratio, and when people talk about Most Wanted, they mostly bring up Razor Callahan and Jonathan Cross, but more on that later. Carbon and Undercover are 2 of my favorite games in the series because the prominent women ratio increases quite a bit. Nikki and Yumi work alongside you as support drivers, while Angie is the head of the 21st Street crew. Undercover, meanwhile, has Chase Lynn being the true villain of the game, and Rose Largo being one of the coolest secondary villains of any racing game ever. When I was young, I wanted to be Rose Largo. I fucking loved everything about her, from her punk vibes to the sheer sense of confidence that she had over the player character. Do you know what Rose's rap sheet consists of? A lot of it is white-collar crime, embezzlement, fraud, con jobs. She is a university graduate who has represented herself in court and won multiple times. And while she does work for GMAC in the game, in no way does she ever play second fiddle to him. Despite her being a criminal, despite Chase Lynn being a criminal, despite all of the above mentioned being criminals, Mia gets honorable mention for backstabbing Cross, which does make him go bounty hunter. You, as the player, inadvertently root for all of these characters to live authentically, even when you know half of them are gonna end up in prison. And it doesn't stop there, because it happens again and again and again. NFS Rivals, Payback, Heat, Unbound, The Crew 1, Midnight Club Los Angeles. All of these are pieces of media that are designed around the idea that you are antithetical to the rule of law and you are okay with that. Racing games have always been woke. So, being me, and being as woke as they come, I have never understood why racing gamers try so damn hard to shy away from that reality. The only way I can really evaluate it is if my aspiration is to be someone like Rose Largo or Hinata from the Motorfest pack, because honestly, she's adorable, then who is it that these supposedly non-woke gamers want to be? That is the real question here. Like, let's take a look at Jonathan Cross for just a minute. In Most Wanted, he is a by-the-book cop who is motivated primarily by his own ego and male machismo. He sees you as criminal scum and makes a point to take you down a peg anytime the two of you cross paths. When you beat him, he carries that grudge into Carbon, only leaving you alone once your bounty is paid. So, what is justice to Jonathan Cross in that moment? You cost the city of Rockport over $1 million in damages, and $150,000 is literally a fraction of that. It doesn't come close to any kind of meaningful restitution under the rule of law. What it does do, however, is satisfies personal restitution to Cross himself. After all, you cost him his career, his pension, though thankfully not his ride, because he probably would have put you 6 feet under if you had. There is an inherent pragmatism that the law is meant to be an equalizer, and letting you go in exchange for a cash payment satisfies that equalization. It is not the heavy-handed bullshit of 25 to life, so it isn't making an example of you as a racer. But you want to know what is making an example? When Frank Mercer beats Lucas Rivera to within an inch of his life in NFS Heat. Mercer's vendetta is peak racist sociopathy. Lucas was first arrested by Mercer years ago. Lucas not only did his time, he quit street racing, opened up a legitimate business, and became a law-abiding taxpayer. And in spite of all that, Mercer still vows to kill him in Chapter 4. The only answer at that point is because Lucas is a minority. Because Mercer somehow believes that minorities are irredeemable. And given his conduct was so bad that Torres just fucking shoots him, you can bet he did something to her as well. If you are the kind of person who wants to be like Mercer, but doesn't want to be like Cross, then you probably are a racist piece of shit in your own life, and you just don't want to admit it. But we're not limited to these two. The list of character archetypes is rather long in this series, and it even branches out to other series in the genre. Why don't we take a look at Razor Callahan? Leader of the Blacklist 15 in Most Wanted, he is best characterized as a Slim Shady wannabe at a time when Slim Shady was peak. One of his defining engagements against you as the player is he assumes that you are in a relationship with Mia, and subsequently asserts that if he beats you, he has a right to her. This does bite him pretty badly when he tries to get handsy with Mia, and she just curb stomps him right before revealing that she was a cop all along. You can bet that she added extra charges to Razor's rap sheet on that alone. Though Razor is far from the only slim wannabe in gaming, there have been a few. Perhaps more notable would be that of Dennis Jefferson, Shiv, primary antagonist of the Crew 1. Because Shiv takes everything about Razor and dials it up to about 15. His character loses all redemption when it is revealed in the Mountain Arc that he killed Roxanne's sister, Daria. And considering he had previously abused Alita when they were dating, it is not hard to put two and two together what else he did. So, if you do happen to look up to Razor or Shiv, there is a lot to be said about you, and none of it is good, full stop. But maybe street racing is low-hanging fruit. What about sanctioned racing? Putting aside how Grid 2, a game that released in 2013, had approximately 0 women in it, the 2022 Grid Legends at least attempted to correct this, but inadvertently revealed how a longtime character in the series was actually one of the shittiest human beings in all of motorsport. Originally seen as just an ace driver in a handful of Grid titles, by Legends you learn that Nathan McCain is a complete and utter fraud. He is a man who uses mechanically overpowered cars to cheat in all of his tournaments, someone who feels absolutely zero remorse at hazing other drivers in the league, the likes of Yume Tanaka, Valentin Menzi, and even his own teammate, Lara Carvalho. Nathan McCain is the definition of anti-woke. He exists purely to keep motorsport white and keep motorsport male. So, is that who you're saying you want to be when you say that you want racing to be anti-woke? Because I just can't imagine wanting to be someone like that. The characters who are diverse are the ones who are most fondly remembered. And even if they are bad people, because remember, we are engaging in unlawful activities, somehow they are never the ones to portray the worst qualities of human beings. Such is usually reserved for the ones who openly discriminate by design. Even someone like Rose Largo, who literally commits fraud on a regular basis, is not fraudulent in the conduct of her character. Do you understand what that means? Rose is unabashedly herself, and she stands on principle. She is accountable to her own actions within the bounds of the story where she is portrayed. Mercer is not accountable. Razor is not accountable. Shiv is not accountable. And Nathan is not accountable. For a game that critics panned as being a 3 out of 10, NFS Undercover, out of all the Need for Speed games that I played in my childhood, is the one that most vividly stuck with me and gave me the most enjoyable experience. That makes it, at least for me, a 10 out of 10. And it is why I will never understand gamers' criticisms of modern racing games, the likes of Motorfest or even Forza Horizon, where they all begrudgingly say, go woke, go broke. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. There was a time where the words Sweet Baby Inc. were considered scandalous in gaming because of some sort of perceived censorship or movement away from some paradigm that I can't even give a fuck about. I had no idea that Sweet Baby Inc. was even a part of Ubisoft until I saw that they were credited as the writing team for the Crew Motorfest, which, it goes without saying, is one of my most played racing games of all time at more than 500 hours. But no joke here. There is a review of Motorfest where the reviewer played the game, and one of his most scathing criticisms is that the pack references the anime/manga series Wangan Midnight. I'm sorry, but how in the fuck does the reference to Japanese media taint the sanctity of your precious racing meta? And did I mention, this is the most replayed part of his video? and the YouTuber in question is Japanese, nor can you pull the bullshit of it being just about the pronunciation. The VA in the game pronounces it with a long A in English, while in pure Japanese it would probably be Wangan with a short A. This YouTuber intentionally mischaracterizes the pronunciation as Wang Gang in a complete act of bad faith. In no way is Motorfest to blame for you being a disingenuous piece of shit. Just tell me why it offends you. Tell me why it offends you that Japanese people are in the Motorfest. Tell me why it offends you that Native Hawaiians are in the festival that literally takes place in the state of Hawaii. Tell me why it offends you that games where you literally fuck the police simultaneously have the tenacity to scream, all cops are bad. Do you really expect me to believe that I can come up here on YouTube, call out NFS Heat for being a cab the game, y'all will say that is what you paid for, then police in real life commit heinous acts of brutality, and within the very same breath, y'all will say that is what you voted for? Pick a fucking lane. How about we talk about truth in television? A year ago, I wrote and recorded a video titled, "We Are All Criminals: Deconstruction of the Rule of Law." It basically went into the nuances of our modern legal system. And it was a kind of thinly veiled warning as pertained to atrocities that are currently happening in places like Minnesota. Everything explained within that video was a matter of precedent. Common law is literally founded on the idea of precedent, and that predates the United States itself by a good 500 years. V2 and I argued in that video how the status of criminal is irrelevant if the actions of the criminal are lawful. Ergo, an undocumented citizen is not violating the law if they are performing their civic duties of working and paying taxes. Status does not override compliance. That is simply not how this shit works. And for all the people who, in my life, threaten to go open season on my ass the moment that being transgender ever becomes illegal, you know damn well that is not how this shit works either. Ex post facto criminalization is prohibited by the US Constitution. Even if you make it somehow illegal to be gender nonconformist, that is moot on my account because I followed the legal process to identify as non-binary, and the relevant court order will remain forever relevant no matter how the law changes. If you decide that doesn't matter, and that violating the Constitution is worth shooting me in the face, all that really proves is that you never cared about the rule of law to begin with. Imagine sacrificing your very principles and the entire country while you're at it, just to be rid of the woke. Is this truly where we are going as a society? Part of my reason for choosing to make this video now is because I am seeing a lot of people in gaming finally having to take a stand and not knowing what the fuck to do. If you are my age, and 99.7% of you are, you know damn well what you need to do. Because if you were not learning this in school for whatever reason, the very games that you were playing were doing all that they could to fill in the gaps for you. Being different used to be celebrated. Diversity used to be strength. And for all of the bullshit of me growing up in a hick conservative town, I'm gonna be honest, People used to be more tolerant of me being trans before this anti-woke bullshit became a thing. I'm gonna give one more take and then I'll leave y'all to it. Where I come from, a lot of people have family or extended family who, if not in law enforcement, are active or former military. So one thing that people joked about a lot when I was growing up was about soldiers who went overseas to Vietnam and along the way made a detour in Thailand, ending up in the red light district. You probably know where I'm going with this. But even though it was a bit of a tasteless joke, the silver lining of it was that these people, soldiers, etc., in no way felt threatened by the idea that there were people of alternative genders and sexualities in other cultures outside of the USA. It was just different to them. I normally have a lot of criticisms about the armed forces, and I don't shy away from airing those criticisms. But I will be the first to admit that the soldiers who have gone out, seen the world beyond our borders, and interacted with diverse groups of people have often returned to the US as better people for it. There is something very profound in that phenomenon. Everything which is happening today in 2026 is predicated on the idea of eliminating diversity. The fact that Immigration Customs Enforcement is going after all immigrants, not just illegals anymore. The fact that government officials are suppressing LGBT symbols, memorials, anything that isn't cis heteronormative. The fact that they are pushing one true religion over the others. All of this is being done to create the illusion of a unified worldview which simply does not exist. Because the world, like racing games, was always woke. That's it for me. Thank you for listening.